Alright, welcome back. Today we are moving right along with the KLX450 project. So I've been sick for a couple of weeks and I wasn't really up to filming. So I got a whole bunch of work done off camera and we are not far away from being done with this project. So I'm quickly going to go through what we did off camera and then we'll jump into what we need to do to get this project done. So first off, we had a leaky fork seal and I had to rebuild the forks. When I rebuilt the forks, or when I tore the forks down, I found a whole bunch of damage to the internal components. So we replaced those internal components with some upgraded bits and we got the forks back together, but we'll dive into that in a moment. We've got all of the cleaned chaos down here as it still was. We've got the carby cleaned inside and out. Also got the rear wheel cleaned up, the rear rim as clean as it's gonna get, spoke nipples, spokes cleaned, disc, sprocket, everything cleaned, and we threw a brand new rear wheel on it, or rear tire on it, so that wheel's complete. So it's getting there. So first of all, let's jump into the old footage of me going through and redoing the forks, and then we'll get into fixing the steering stem bearings. Initially, I just wanted to do fork seals, but because these are dual chamber forks, I decided to pull the inner chamber apart as well, and I'm glad I did because the base valves were absolutely destroyed. So these are just plastic pieces and they get brittle and the edges break off and the bushings were worn out anyway. So unexpected surprise, but fortunately Zeta, they make top quality parts and they have a stock replacement for the base valves. Now the Zeta part is much cheaper than getting it from Kawasaki, South Africa, or any OEM dealer, because the OEM sells the whole assembly and we obviously just need the base valve. So the kit comes with obviously the anodized aluminum base valve, new shims and new o-rings, super easy to install, and we've also got new fork seals. So I already assembled the right hand fork just to get a bit of practice in before the video, so now we are just going to throw this together. So this is not going to be an instructional video. There are loads of those online to redo the KYB AOS forks. I would recommend, if you want to rebuild your forks yourself, get the factory manual and work according to that. That's what I'm doing. I did watch a YouTube video or two just to get an idea of the disassembly, but when I actually go to do the work, I follow the manual's instruction, because it's got all the fluid level specs, what specific fluid you need to use, and all the torque settings for reassembly. Before we jump in, just a reminder to you guys, all the parts that we sourced for this bike we got through EMD Racing. So if you guys want to get a little bit of a discount when you buy stuff at EMD, go to JJ and tell him that Mud and Dust Moto sent you. Then you can get a small discount on all the stuff that you buy from them. Every little bit helps nowadays, so take advantage of that, and yeah, go to JJ, order your stuff, get your discount. So once you've got the dampening rod installed and the nut on with the non-permanent thread locker, you want to use your 14mm Allen socket and 15mm wrench to tighten this down, and it needs to be torqued to 29 Newton meters. Now that we've got the lock nut torqued down, we're gonna reinstall the adjuster assembly, and this needs to be torqued down to 55 Newton meters. Alrighty, now that we've got our fork assembled, we can remove the top cap again and add in 335 milliliters of fork oil as per the manual. Then we need to tighten down and torque down the top cap. So to do that, as you can see, this fork tool has this little spot over here. So you can attach this to your torque wrench, and this does change the torque ratio a bit, but in the manual they did the math for you. And basically you need to torque the top cap to 30 Newton meters, and with this little extra piece it's got more leverage, so it's putting more torque on the nut. According to the manual, you need to set your torque wrench to 27 Newton meters if you attach it on this point. Once again, we're going to take it slow, and we're going to start off by pouring 200 mils first, and then we'll add the last 135 mils. Now if you hold your little pouring cup against the fork tube, it'll run right down the inner fork tube, then you don't make a mess. 100, 10, 20, 35. A good guesstimate. It's kind of trippy pouring the fluid in and watching what you're doing through the camera. Alrighty, so as I mentioned, this is how the torque wrench attaches to the fork tool, and we've got it adjusted appropriately to 27 Newton meters. We've got the fork clamped in the vise. It's not super tight, just tight enough to hold it in place, and then we'll go ahead and torque this, top cap down. With the suspension done, now at least the next owner can have peace of mind knowing that the suspension is rebuilt with upgraded components and everything is torqued to spec. Now it's time to jump into the wheels. So I need to pull the tires off, and they still need to be cleaned, and then we need to get this little blemish out. It's a fairly substantial ding, but I think we should be able to get it out fairly easily. So unfortunately the old rim was not salvageable because that spoke hole is wallowed out from the impact, so we had to end up getting a new rim. So we got a racecraft rim from EMD Racing. Speak to JJ to get your discount as always. Now unfortunately this rim is a bit more of a polished finish versus the brushed finish on this rim, but I mean it'll get old and dulled up soon enough. So I've taken great care to tighten down all of the spokes equally. It took me about 2 days of working on it part-time, just incrementally tightening the spokes. So it's pretty close to true, but we still need to true the wheel. It's got a slight bit of a wobble. I don't have a wheel truing stand, but that's where the bike comes in. So when we throw the forks in, we can actually mount the wheel and use that as a makeshift wheel truing stand. But before we do that, we need to replace the steering stem bearings because they are toast. I don't know if you'd be able to hear this on camera. That is not a noise you want coming from your steering stem bearings. So we've got some freshies from EMD as well. We are going to throw those in, get the steering stem torqued down to spec, throw the forks in, true the wheel, put a tire on it, and then we can go ahead and throw all of this junk back onto the frame. Right, so with the steering stem torqued down to spec, we've got the forks installed as you saw in the time lapse. Now we can just level out the forks, tighten them down. I'm not going to torque them down yet because they might have to come out again. Then we'll throw the front wheel on and true that. So yeah, making some good progress. It's starting to look like a dirt bike again. We've got the wheel trued, or at least as true as I'm able to get it with the time that I have available. Alrighty, so we've got the front wheel and tire done, and the rear wheel and tire. I'm surprised I did not pinch the tube. They both have heavy duty tubes front and rear, so ideal for the XC rider. Handlebar on, steering stem in. Now it's time to get the bike on the ground, torque down all the engine mounts, all of the rear suspension, and then it's the journey to throw all of this junk back on the bike. Alrighty, so to get the motor mounts, the swing arm pivot and the linkage mounts torqued down, the bike needs to be supported by its own weight, or on its own weight. So we've just got it very loosely strapped to the bench there, and then we're going to go through, torque the engine, torque the pivot, torque the linkage, and then we can jump onto throwing the rest of the stuff back onto the chassis. Alrighty, so I went into freaking autopilot mode last night. I was working on the bike till about like 3 a.m. this morning. So unfortunately, while I was working, I think the last thing you guys saw was me talking down the suspension stuff, but the camera died and I didn't notice, and by the time I was more or less at this stage, I went to check the camera and I saw that it was dead. So there is literally no footage of the final assembly, unfortunately. I'm definitely not going to take the bike apart again and do it again for you guys. But yeah, the bike looks absolutely freaking killer. So now we're a bit further ahead, and that's pretty much where we're going to end this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe. It goes a long way to help the channel, and if you want to see more builds like this, your feedback will definitely help me, or help guide me in the right direction, which project we should do next. The KLX450 or my KTM that's lying in a pile there. Either one's feasible. The KDX needs a little bit less, the KTM needs more work. But anyway, so in the next video we're going to be dropping this thing off at Robert Co, getting the graphics kit printed and applied, and then it is done. We'll probably take it out for one ride just to shake it down, make sure everything's tight, check it afterwards, make sure the bike's running sweetly, and then it'll go onto the showroom floor. So yeah, thanks for joining me on this build. It was a quick two-parter, even though the timeline was fairly long, but yeah, I appreciate you guys watching and subscribing. Peace out and keep ripping.